Shall we get started? Let's, shall we? I did mention in the introduction that we're going to work through everything that is covered in the crochet overview or the Tunisian crochet overview section in the booklet. But we're going to structure it in a way that you don't have to kind of learn all that before you make a start on your project. So as we go through it, I'll sort of tell you where we are in the pattern at that point, or vice versa, tell you what we're going to do in the pattern. Just basically walk you through what's going on at any one time. Tunisian, a quick overview really is, I think as I said in the introduction, rather than working with one stitch at a time on your hook, you want to work with lots of stitches at a time on your hook, so big sort of rows of stitches. And what happens is you kind of work them from right to left and then left to right, and that there and back again is a row. So the there and back again, your starting point is always on the right hand side of your hook, and you'll have lots of stitches. You'll see that as we go along, but right at this moment in time I have no stitches to work, so we've got to get to the point of having something to show you from a standing start of a ball of yarn and a hook. And Tunisian crochet is kind to us in that it eases us in a very familiar way, in that we're going to start with a chain. And you know, lots of our crochet projects start with a chain, don't they? I'm going to just work, for these videos, I'm not going to work the full width of stitches because the cowl itself starts with 75, I think, stitches. You might want to do more or less. Have a little look in the overview about sizing and changing it if you want to, but just for the purposes of showing you the techniques, I'm going to start with I'm just going to make a small piece, and I'm going to start with a chain of about 20 chains there. So I've made my slip knot and I'm just making a chain, and I'm going to make this chain quite loose. You know, it's reasonable practice on most things really to make your starting chain not too tight. If you're making a blanket, it tends to turn that first couple of rows into a banana if you make it too tight. And for this particular project, obviously the cowl, you don't want it too tight so it won't stretch around, if you're like me and cranially blessed, so it won't stretch over your big old noggin. So I'm just going to do sort of 20 or so. I'm going to shut up talking so I can count. Hold on. Okay, so we've done sort of 20, I think, or thereabouts, chains there, and you can see it's nice and bouncy and loose, so we haven't made that chain too taut to begin with. And where we are in the overview section, we're obviously in the let's get started part of the overview section and making a chain. Where we are in your actual pattern is we are on the first half of row 1. Okay, and your pattern, having just checked it, is actually 76 chain to start, not 75. So we're on the first part of row 1, which is making that chain. So we've done that. The second part of row 1 and the second part of the getting started asks us to put our hook into each of the chains and pull up a loop. So let me show you that. So I'm going to, what I like to do when I work into the chain on any project, because you're going to do the same sort of thing on a normal or a non-Tunisian crochet project, aren't you? Work into the chain. What I've found is a nice way to do it, if you don't do this already, is if I turn that chain so they face downwards and you can sort of see the little dashes that run along the back. I like to put my hook under those little dashes and pull my loop up there. So I've put my hook under the first little dash and I'm just going to pull up a loop and leave it on the hook. So now I've got 2. Okay, and I'm just going to work along. So the next one along, 3, and off I go. And I'm going to do this all the way along, and you will notice that I am just going to leave those loops on the hook. And okay, I've got quite a small or a short chain here, but when you work the real one, those loops are going to work all the way along the hook and onto the cable, and it's quite thrilling for us crocheters who are used to only having one in front of us, one sort of loop in front of us at any one time. It's quite exciting. All of a sudden, we've got a whole row of them to deal with, and it's getting a little bit like, I'm going to whisper it so you don't throw things at the TV or whatever you're watching this on. It's a little bit like a row of knitting. Shh. We'll never say it again. So yes, just go all the way along and pull up your loop. So I'm going to do that and I'll see you at the end. Right, coming up to the last one. Oops. And there we go. So if I spread those out, they will go onto the cable. I wanted them to. Can you see they're all just sitting there nice and secure? They're not going anywhere. They're sat on that cable. But we've got very obviously more than one loop on our hook. And we are now sort of set up to properly Tunisian crochet. So we've just completed, that's row 1 that we've completed, and that's the first part of the Let's Get Started section in our Tunisian crochet overview. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I said that with Tunisian crochet, we work there and back again. Okay, our beginning point is over here on the right where I'm pinching it over here. So we've worked there, and we've got to come back again. And this coming back again is called the return pass. And that's what I'm going to show you now. And that remains the same sort of throughout, actually. So this is kind of how you're going to be working back from left to the right all the way through your project. And the return pass that we're now going to do, that will be row 2 of your actual for real project. Okay, so this is going to be the return pass, and this is what's going to make row 2 in your pattern. So we've got all these lovely stitches on our hook and we're ready to go, and we're always going to start by making a chain in that first stitch. So we're just going to, I don't know why I can't pick up this yarn today. We're going to make a yarn, or put the yarn round the hook and bring it through that first loop on the hook. Okay, so just making a chain there. Okay, and now we're going to pick up our yarn and pull through the next 2 loops on the hook. Okay, so there it's picked up and through 1 and through 2. Okay, and we'll do the same again. Pick up the yarn, go through 2 loops, 1 and 2, and that's all we're going to do all the way across. Yarn over and through 2, and it's yarn over and through 2, and obviously you'll be going at a much faster rate than this, but I'm doing it slowly to show you. Just picking up the yarn and going through 2 loops. Again, should be familiar. This is sort of crocheting nuts and bolts, isn't it, really? All the way across through 2. And if you look, I'll do a few more and we'll see the effect it's having on the work. Right, you can see what's happening here is we're creating these vertical, move that out of the way, these vertical posts here, and underneath and behind you can see the sort of horizontal yarn running through them. That's what's sort of filling in the gaps that have been made by making those, pulling the loops up onto the hook, just filling that in. So yarn over and through 2 all the way along. Okay, so I'm now on to the last 2, and if I was just doing a regular return pass, I would just come through the last 2 and be done. Okay, it would leave me with 1 loop on my hook, and I'll be ready to start on the next row. So if you're following this to make the actual cowl, if you're working the actual pattern and you're coming to the end here of row 2, you will notice we've got an extra instruction on row 2, and that instruction is change to colour B on the last yarn over. So what that does is that brings us into the next part of our overview section, which is colour changes. So we'll handle that in the next video.